Good evening. I'm Armando Cuellar, President of the Weslaco ISD Board of Trustees. This special board meeting is being conducted in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. The board is meeting by the use of Google Meets and telephone transmission, which allows two-way communication for members of the public during public comments. A recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. The time now is 5:41, and I call this meeting to order. I'll now begin the roll call each board member by name, and when I call your name, just signify your presence by saying, "Here present." Mr. Isidro Nieto?
Present.
Mrs. Jackie Sustaita?
Present.
Coach Jesse Trevino? Dr. Jaime Rodriguez?
Present.
Mr. Mark de los Santos?
Present.
Mr. Andrew Gonzalez? Myself, Armando Cuellar. Let the record reflect that we have a quorum of members in attendance. Item 3, public comments.
There are none.
Item 4, we will go into closed meeting to discuss A, personnel matters, Texas Government Code 551.074. 1, employment of certified professional personnel. 2, resignations, retirements. 3, deliberation regarding the appointment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, Texas Government Code 551.074 and 551.071. B, consultation with attorney regarding A, pending or contemplated litigation, B, a settlement offer, or C, a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the Weslaco ISD under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code 551.071. The time now is 5:42, and we will go into closed session. The time now is 6:34, and we have reconvened an open meeting. Items A, possible action if necessary on items discussed in closed meeting. 1, discussion and possible action on employment of certified professional personnel. Dr. Valdez.
Mr. President, Board of Trustees, recommendation is for approval as discussed in closed session.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Los Santos and a second by Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Take it to a vote. Signify your approval by saying aye when I call your names. Mr. Nieto.
Aye.
Ms. Slater.
Aye.
Costeño.
Aye.
Dr. Rodriguez.
Aye.
Mr. Los Santos.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 2, discussion and possible action on resignations and retirements. Dr. Valdez.
Recommendation is for approval as discussed in closed session.
So move.
We have a motion by Mr. Nieto,
Second.
second by Dr. Rodriguez. Just take it to a vote. Signify your approval by saying aye when I call your name. Mr. Nieto.
Aye.
Mr. Slater.
Aye.
Costeño.
Aye.
Dr. Rodriguez.
Aye.
Mr. Los Santos.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Motion carries. Before we go any further, I want to acknowledge and let the record reflect that Mr. Gonzalez joined our meeting at 5:48 and Costeño joined our meeting at 6:17. We had two grievances that were scheduled for tonight, but we, on one, are going to uphold the level 2 grievance on one and has been dismissed, and on the other will be postponed and rescheduled due to personal reasons. So with that being said, we go to item 10, adjournment.
So move.
We have motion for adjourn, and the time is 6:37.
You trying to give Jackie a chance?
Yeah, you missed it, Jackie.
Being conducted pursuant to the Open Meetings Act. Notice of this meeting has been postponed, has been posted online for at least 72 hours. The board is meeting by the use of Google Meets and telephone transmission, which allows two-way communication for members of the public during public comments. A recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. The time now is 6:39, and I call this workshop to order. I now begin the roll call. Call on each board member by name. Signify your presence by saying here or present when I call your name. Mr. Nieto.
Present.
Mrs. Slater.
Present.
Costeño.
Present.
Dr. Rodriguez.
Present.
Mr. Los Santos.
Present.
And Mr. Gonzalez.
Present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum present. Um, Item 3, public comments.
There are none?
We go to item 4, discussion on 2022-2023 budget. Dr. Valdez?
President Cuellar, members of the board, and members of the audience, this evening we do have several topics of discussion and presentations will ensue by different staff members and members that we have here representing our tax attorneys. So the first item we have is discussion on 22-23 budget. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Andres Sanchez, our Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance.
Thank you, Carlos. Good evening, Dr. Valdez, Mr. Cuellar, members of the board. This is our second workshop on the proposed 2022-2023 budget. And I'll try to make it quick, but I'll try to speak slow. And if I don't, please tell me to slow down. I forget and sometimes run through things very fast. Okay, I had mentioned before, you're aware this is a 12-month budget for next year. And the budget is based on the ADA as of February 18, which is the end of the first 6 weeks of school. I am? Well, okay. Okay, now I am. I'm controlling it. Didn't think of that. Okay. The budget as of February 18, we had mentioned at the prior board meeting, I believe it's 13,840. Which is 1,360 less ADA that we had budgeted. That represents $9.7 million of less revenue that we're going to have. It's a big deficit. I'll elaborate on that later on. The campuses received an initial allocation based on the ADA they had for the campus as of February 18. For the calculation of taxes, we will need to use an estimate of the property values for next year, which will be issued by the Hidalgo County Appraisal District in April 22. We will work with estimates of the next M&O tax rate compression rates. TA will approve compression rates in August, so we will not know by the time we approve the budget what those rates will be. So we're going to use estimates for that. The student enrollment as of March 11, 2022, the last day of school before spring break, was 15,813. The projected peak enrollment for next year is 15,681. That's 180 less approximately. Self-funded insurance plan. This is where we have the medical insurance. They're the largest component of this plan. Following the medical insurance claims, as of February 28, the district may need to increase contributions from the district, employees, or both. If needed, we'll try to keep the increases to the district only, but depending on how things go, we still got 4 months to go with the plan to give you better information on that. But that's what we're looking at right now. As of February 28, the medical claims for the current year were exceeded by 1.1 million compared to last year. Last year was 1.1 million less, so we're already over. We started the year with a $2 million reserve from prior years when we had more revenue than expenses. So that will help offset some of the costs we have. But being that we have more expenses now, more than likely we'll have more next year. So that's why we think that we might need to increase the rates. On the district or the employees or both.
On the medical claims that we're looking at and the increase in medical claims, do any of these fall under COVID-19? And if they do, is it possible to use ESSER funding to reimburse the district for that?
That is a very good question, Mr. De Los Santos. Of this it's actually just 1.4 million. We're looking at about roughly $350,000 that are directly related to COVID.
Okay.
The other increases, we are actually about 100 individuals less on the plan this year versus last year. Again, we had a lot of retirements, we had a lot of staff leave due to COVID, so there's less people, so there's less contributions going in. So
Right.
versus $20 million that we had in last year, we're at about 19.5. So another reason also for the increase is, just like we hear all around the news, inflation, the rising costs of goods, materials, it's the same thing in the medical field. You go into the hospital, their increases or their costs are increasing, so they're passing that along to us.
Okay.
But I'll have more information with y'all later on, and when we get closer to the, a little bit farther in, we're about 6 months in, actually. We'll have a better idea of what we need to do, and we'll have a workshop and present alternatives to the board.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mike,
And as far as the use of ESSER funds, we don't know, but we can check on it.
Yeah, we'll check on that.
Okay, employee compensation. The budget for the payroll portion of the budget will be based on the payroll for February 2022. That means all employees in payroll as of that month will be used to budget for the following year. Because of the loss of ADA that we have, I mentioned $9.7 million deficit this year. We mentioned to the board that we were going to reclassify some of our local teachers from local funds to the ESSER program, to the ESSER 3. So we reclassified them. So we plan to keep the same teachers in ESSER funds for next year between ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. And we're doing this to help us with the budget because ADA is probably going to be low, as it is with all districts in the state. So that's one of the things that we're doing. We have the option to use ESSER funds for that, so we want to exercise the option to do that. So
And those ESSER funds will be just for 2 years?
well, they're for 3 years, but we only want to do it for next year.
Okay.
We don't want to use it for the third year, because then we'll be in deep trouble if we cannot figure it out.
Yeah, I was gonna
before
say,
then.
what's gonna happen then?
Right.
When the money, we don't have ESSER anymore
so-
with all these
correct.
people.
Well, I know that a lot
It's
of
a plan.
districts, I'm sorry. Now, a lot of districts are using attrition to,
Correct.
okay,
That's-
to, instead of doing like a
Right.
RIF, slowly in the process, or slowly starting to just do it through attrition, starting to downsize their staffing to where it should be.
That is what we have been doing through attrition.
I did not list it in here, but yes, we have discussed it at the cabinet level.
Right.
To do that. So I know the HR department, our administrators are working that with the staff to, in principle, to see if there's any staff that is leaving. Can we use
Right.
all the staff to cover for them or something
Well,
like
yeah, just move people around.
Right. Yes. As you all know, that TASB, the Texas Association of School Boards, is working on our staffing, salaries, and stipends, and they will present the results on May 12th. Right now, they're evaluating possible pay raises for 1%, 2%, 3%, in the event that we can do something like that, but they're working on that. Expecting enrollment in ADA will make it very hard for the district to approve any pay raises for next year.
Right.
I mentioned 1, 2, and 3, but I would think maybe 1%, but maybe not even that. You just mentioned, Mr. Stight, about the ESSER, if we don't have it. If we were to say, well, we have these teachers that we're going to move to ESSER, that's going to free up local funds, we can do the pay raise. Yeah, but when the ESSER leaves,
Right.
the compensation stays higher, how are we going to cover it? If the ADA does not improve. We hope, the hope is ADA to go up, but that looks very hard for right
And I
now.
think it's a hard reality for all school districts. When you look at them, well, and especially comparable in our size, everyone took a reduction because of COVID. And, there's only one entity actually that increased dramatically. But other than that, public schools, most of them, they all, across the board, across the whole entire valley, I was looking at the data earlier, and they all took massive hits. But my question is, I was looking at ADA though, in particular for us. What processes do we do for intake of students? Because I saw that we had a drop across the whole entire valley in school districts, public school systems. But even then, I was also looking at their ADAs, their average ADAs, and they're not as low as ours. Historically, even before COVID, Weslaco's ADA has always been off by over 1,000 students, or if not more. So, like, you had 16,500 students, but you were hitting an ADA of like 15,585, so when we're intaking students, I mean, have we kind of looked at the population? Is it students that we have that are zoned to our system that are affecting the ADA? Is it students that we're accepting from outside the school system that's affecting our ADA? Has there been any type of analysis on that to see what are the students that are affecting that? Why can't we hit a higher
Pre-K.
percentage or?
Pre-K, right now is pre-K. If you
Pre-K.
look at pre-K in the last report, their average daily attendance is not even hitting 80%.
Okay.
So that's really driving several percentage points down with pre-K,
Okay.
the little ones. We can do a further study to as far as ADA with elementary, but it is pre-K that is significantly driving the
numbers down.
percentage down. That's what I noticed with pre-K.
Parents are probably keeping them home.
The little ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the little ones, and then with COVID and, yeah.
My question for the ADA, for the virtual school, we're still doing it, right?
Yes.
That counts as part of our ADA also, right?
Correct.
Are we going to continue doing it next year also, or is it just this year?
We can, TEA does afford school districts for next year, up
Okay.
until next year. That'll be a decision that the district will need to make as far as if
Okay.
we're going to continue the implementation.
Correct.
And how is the attendance for those kids that are doing virtual learning? Is it, like, are we looking at good
Yes, Mr.
numbers?
Aguilar has more
That'll-
details on on what we call VLA, Virtual
ma'am.
Learning Academy.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Dr. Valdez, members of the board. Just to give you an update, as of Monday, we take our counts, elementary, 168 students, middle school, 56 students, and high school, 20 students.
Okay.
That's our enrollment right now.
So we
And they
use the big-
fluctuate from week to week. And the remote conferencing, of course, that's going to fluctuate as well. Elementary, we have 6, middle school 6, and high school 9.
Okay. So a lot of the bigger numbers are obviously with the elementary kids because parents don't want to send them to school yet.
Right.
And
Yes, ma'am.
that's
And
something we
even
need
in
to
the
focus-
decrease of enrollment, the district must target elementary. We have to get them in early, entice parents, grandparents. We had this discussion in cabinet Monday about initiatives with the little ones. Because elementary, total, between elementaries, we're minus almost 800 children. And you have to get them early. Like, there's got to be a 0 to 3 initiative in the community to attract and
Yeah.
retain.
Somebody brought that up. I know that if we had the Head Start program with the 3-year-olds, right, the pre-K 3. I know other districts are somehow using funds to have everybody, regardless of,
Income.
the income or the language,
Universal.
universal
pre-K.
pre-K 3, and that's enticing
All day,
some
too.
people.
It's a full day universal pre-K.
To bring their
You'd
kids.
have to crunch the numbers on how much the cost.
Yeah, that come at the
I even
district.
proposed to cabinet, I said, you need to come up with a Weslaco ISD, like, early childhood academy, like a university, like a prep, toddler prep for Weslaco.
Yeah.
From 0 to 3. That would be amazing. That's like innovative.
Right. Right.
And then even with the grandpas and grandmas to do a golden pass, I talked to cabinet, I said, work on something like this where you have grandmas and grandpas who play a vital role in their grandchildren's education and life in
Right.
general. And you have them receive a golden pass to get, free passes to get into UIL athletic events for free that are home here in Weslaco, or UIL fine arts events, anything that the district is hosting, you invite the grandparents for free so they can bring their grandchildren. And those are ways that you attract and you retain. And then for the early childhood little university prep would be where you give these families the access to whatever instructional programs you already have. Just give them the login credentials, and you're exposing them to the high-quality education that WESCO has to offer.
You know, one of the things
Definitely.
I saw, I was looking at the information as far as students that we were graduating. Well, first of all, let me start off. I was looking at the information as far as intake and outtake. So how many students are we losing to a certain district or charter school, and how many actually we're getting back within the same year? And if you do those numbers, it's not that much. It's very small. So like, let's say a charter school, we lose 189 to them. 1 year they leave the district, but we also have a return of 129. So you're really only losing 6. It's very small numbers.
Right.
And I think I talked with Mr. Aguilar, is that we're graduating a large number of students. We graduated a lot of students here in Weslaco ISD, but we're not getting the little ones are not
Little
enrolling.
ones. It's the little ones.
And that was kind of like the marketing strategy, because we have a great, I mean, in most districts, I'm gonna be honest, in some cases, you'll see districts, and those are the ones that struggle academically, they will move teachers from testing areas and lower them down in some cases. They'll say, you're not cutting at 3rd, 4th, and 5th, et cetera, but we're gonna put you in kinder. Weslaco ISD is very unique because they have their best teachers in pre-KK, where
Early
you just
childhood
have
is
an,
so-
I know, because my kids went through the system, and they're all at or above reading level. And so you have and you have to fight to try to get them, because they fill up quick. And a lot of our community doesn't know that. That's part of our advertising, you know. I know all the secondary UIL sports, et cetera, and all those things are really great to advertise to. We want to showcase and give them time. But the reality and the gist of it is that we need to attract the ones that are never showing up, period, through the doors.
Correct.
And so we need to change our marketing strategy and show our early literacy programs. I think we need to also look at investing and renovating those pre-K, first and second grade classrooms, state-of-the-art equipment, furniture, et cetera, on top of what they already have, because they're already in great condition. And just our marketing, show parents that aren't part of Weslaco ISD yet, kind of like you're saying, the golden ticket, go into daycares and or private schools, and we know that they're going to be going to an educational system, inviting them to do walkthroughs, and kind of like how we send kids to colleges to do college tours. We can ask those parents to come into our classrooms, meet the teachers, meet the campus administration, look at the classrooms themselves, do walkthroughs prior to them even enrolling. And so they know exactly what we're offering, because, I mean, reality is when you look at the numbers, we are the best educational institution in the community. So I think we just need to market that better.
Yeah.
Mr. Aguilar.
Do you have, excuse me, we have all that vital information on residents, and when we market, like Mr. Los Santos saying, a way to call and make sure that they're viable residencies, and that we're not just throwing out a lot of literature that's going to be sent back. So we want to target those that we know are effectively living here, and why they're not with us. So
Correct.
that's important to know.
Correct, and very good points on that. You know, one of the things that especially the elementary campus administrators are working with the early education allotment right now. They're really enhancing a lot of that development with your K to third grade, building up. We're using a lot of those funds to build that up, spruce that up, be more innovative on what we're doing. So we're seeing those allocations come in with those expenses and what they're earmarking those monies for. Prior to the COVID, we were very high with our pre-K numbers. They were very high. We had a high recruitment, close to 500. We had several students coming in. I think it's still that fear of holding them back and sending the little ones in, and that's what we tend to encounter, and that's what the principals, teachers, campus administrators are still dealing with, trying to get them back in, and we're still trying to provide, this is a safe environment, this is what we're doing, this is everything we have in place, but it's still, letting go, trying to get them in. Slowly they're coming in. We're getting them trickled in and so forth, even those that we have virtually. Because the state is not going to make any accommodations or exceptions for state assessments this year. So therefore, they can be receiving virtual learning, but they have to come in and test on campus.
Mr. Aguilar.
Yes, sir.
A quick question for you. We had 1,500 slots, right, for the VLA, give or take?
Well, for the VLA, we pretty much opened it up based on need, as long as they met that criteria.
Okay, so based on all the applications, I know we only took the ones that qualified.
Correct.
So the ones that didn't, did we get them back on campus?
We met with parents, and I know the principals worked with the parents, because we have to meet that criteria to get them in. And the criteria was very limited. Either they met the criteria from the previous year, or they come in under a medical condition.
Right, but my question to you is, since we have the names of those students and parents, did those students physically go to a campus, or did
We'd
they
have
go
to-
elsewhere?
I can
That
give
is-
you-
That is my question to you,
Correct.
if you can look that up.
Sure, we can provide that in the
Because, again,
update.
that's another way to, how do we bring them back?
Okay.
Right, and I understand that there's the guidelines that they have to meet for that VLA, but just another way to try to reach out if we didn't get some of those students.
The principals are working with that, but I'll get you some accurate numbers.
Another
Just in the
Providing the
update, though.
Was it 10% that we could have in VLA of our enrollment?
Yes, but we
Okay.
didn't get to that point. We
And I was
weren't
going to
maxing
say,
out.
but
Yeah.
we didn't but they wouldn't have penalized us if we have 10% of our, or not penalized, but we're okay with having 10% of our students do virtual learning, right?
But
Correct.
only if they qualify.
If they
qualify.
qualify.
But
do
only,
we
it's
get
only if
funding?
they qualify.
Well-
We can't just say, okay, 10% of my kids, whether they qualify or not,
Right.
they
They had-
have to
to
qualify.
qualify.
They have to
For
qualify.
Oh,
us to
okay. I
receive
thought there was
funding.
just like, okay, you can have 10%, you guys figure
No.
out who you want.
No. They have to meet the
Because that would have been
criteria.
a great way to
Yeah.
get some people back in. Okay.
They have to meet the criteria. And what the principals have been monitoring is how they're moving along academically. So they're having those discussions with the parents. If they're struggling, if they're not moving along, they're encouraging them to bring them back in. If you recall, we started off with over 300 with elementary. So that's pretty much been cut in half of what we're looking at. The consistency has stayed about the same with middle and high school with those numbers, but elementary numbers have been cut in about half.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Sure, you're
Okay,
welcome.
Mr. Aguilar.
You're welcome.
Okay. I was mentioning that the expected enrollment in ADA being lower will make it very hard for the district to approve pay raises for 22-23. However, the district will be recommending that $2,000 recruitment stipend that we had talked to the board about of $2,000, and that will be paid from SE2 funds. And we're going to recommend strictly that we make it on a monthly basis instead of upfront. Because we had a lot of people that got it and left the next month, some later on, and we're having a hard time getting. Some people say, okay, I have money deducted. Most everybody said, well, I'm getting people to sign the letter, but
Yeah, I know
chance
it's
of
gonna happen.
getting the money is going to be very hard. So we'd rather do it monthly.
Okay.
And I think we do that with everything else, like with stipends. With
Right.
stipends, we include it in the monthly pay. And then if, say, for example, a coach resigns from coaching in March, they don't pay him for April and May, you know, so,
You
What about-
prorate, right?
yeah, you prorate it.
Right. Yep, we'll spread it over the 12 months.
But in most cases, there's always, because I resigned in February, in most cases, there's almost like, I had one, like a payment and a half or whatever left. So why wouldn't we be able to deduct it from there?
When it's a professional employee, usually that's the case, because they have money. But a professional employee don't have that much money available. Teachers do because they earn the money by May, and they get it through August, so there's 3 more payments to receive.
Yes.
So that is the difference.
So why not, like, we propose it like for the instructional staff, for the teachers, do it up front for them and then do it monthly for the rest of the staff?
But there's still, and we can discuss it more later, but they're still depending on when they leave, because we pay, we pay early in the month. Most everybody pays on the 25th, when TA sends us the money, we pay early, between the 8, 9, 10, 14 at the most. So depending on when a person leaves, even if it's a teacher, we're gonna be having little money left in some cases.
So maybe if we didn't do it in September like this past year, maybe wait till December, and by December, most teachers
Right.
will have
Well,
an
We'll have to
accumulated-
do it, if that is the case, do half in December and half in June. You here to December, you get half, 1,000. You here through the end of the year, you get the other
But then if
1,000.
you prorate it, let's say somebody starts in October, if you prorate it, isn't it easier just to prorate it because the
Monthly.
people who started like in between August to December,
Well, it depends. Last time
it's so
you all said,
complicated.
if they come in by this date, they qualify, otherwise there's no proration.
Oh, yeah, the cutoff date, yeah.
If they
they
come
don't
in
make-
by the
Cutoff
cutoff
date.
date,
It's a retention.
qualify.
Retention stay.
Or
Yeah, well,
recruitment
coming
also,
back, yeah.
it's
It's
recruitment.
not a
Retention,
stipend.
recruitment.
Yeah.
that, like, they earn it in there. We can prorate it. This one, no. It's,
Yeah, it's not just retention, it's recruitment, it's to
yeah,
get
both
teachers
retention
to
and
work,
recruitment,
which
right.
we don't really,
But we have a
we're
deadline.
overstaffed.
All right, well, we have a deadline now.
After the deadline, they come in September, they don't qualify.
They don't get it.
Not this
Right.
year.
Not this year.
Right.
No, yeah, we won't need, the recruitment, I don't think this year.
Right.
Okay. Administration will ask for the board to consider approval of the compensation plan and pay raises, if any, by May 31. And the reason I'm saying that is because Charles is going to come up with an evaluation of the compensation plan, hopefully May 12th, discuss it with the board, so the board has a chance to look at it and make any comments, recommendations on the compensation plan. So we have it ready by the end of the month. And also, if we have pay raises, approve them. Because if there are pay raises, the state funds and the federal funds need to know how much money is for payroll, how much is not, so they can budget the remainder of the budget. And they don't start really hitting the budget until after that. So if we wait longer, we won't be able to have the budget ready for approval in June.
What is our deadline on contracts?
What do you mean contract?
Like a contract, the time frame window that we have to approve contracts?
Oh.
For the following school year?
Our intent at this time is to bring contracts to the board on April the 19th. That is our intent. That's the meeting we return the day after the day after the Easter holiday.
I'm kind of concerned with that because of the salary study is gonna be done till May 12, right? So I feel, I'm not going to feel 100% approving a contract when we still don't have the salary,
Yeah.
study done until May the 12th.
That's kind of why I was asking, what's the maximum that we can go, because that salary study won't come into after the fact? Or, but then again, I understand that we need to,
Yeah.
employees
What
need
can
to
we
know.
do? What's
Right,
the best-
and I guess at some point, it allows us to have some static numbers, because if everything's in flux, then it's hard to make some of those decisions, right? So if we can have the number that we are going through, and again, we're approving contracts, we're not approving what the pay or the salary already is. It
Oh,
is
okay.
just
Just
simply
contracts.
the contract.
Employment.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So
thought
again,
were
if we,
approving
if
pay.
we say zero raise, all we've done is approve the contract for the individual. We haven't approved any of what they are going to be paid or compensated.
What's the timeline for notifying people that they're having contracts or not getting them? Is it still a 45-day window, or has that changed?
Are you saying, Coach Cuellar, as far as if they're being non-renewed, or as far as if they're letting?
Or if they're going to be having contracts? Because I think when I was still working, I remember that we needed to be notified by a certain day that you are going to have a contract, or vice versa, whatever.
Let me look into it to make sure we can put it in the update so we give you an accurate date. I don't want to say something that is incorrect.
Okay, well, I was just curious if anything has changed, because, we
And
want to
that's
make
what
sure
we'll
that our employees know that they have security with positions, or if there's
Exactly.
something that might change, they also need to know. So I was just curious about that timeline.
Okay.
We'll follow up with
Okay, thank you. Mr. Yezo, I'll ask you, are you aware of any changes to that, or?
Not at this time right now.
No
We still
change-
follow the
No
same
changes that I know of yet.
45 days
It was
before the.
45 days before
The last day of school. Right.
So
Okay,
yeah.
okay, I'm just curious about that, because I've been out for
Right.
a bit and wasn't 100% sure, but.
But you know what, we talk about pay raises and especially this year, because teachers, not only teachers, staff have worked really hard over this past 2 years, and to say that, it's not possible to give pay raises, that's
Yes.
kind of hard, but I think we have to be working with that so we can,
At least
provide something for all staff, because they've been working hard. Hopefully, the state will adjust the ADA. That's what
We're
all
waiting
school
for the
districts are waiting
commissioner
for
to
that.
make that announcement.
Yeah,
And if they do, I think then we can work with that.
Yes, and TASB, working with our HR directors, have noted that, I guess most school districts in the region or around the state are looking at a 1%.
Right.
Yeah. And, one of the things that, we asked for the workshop was so that the community and the staff are aware. I think it's fair that they should be aware of exactly where we stand and what we're going through, which a lot of other districts are going through.
Right.
And it's a team effort. I mean, the only way to get through these type of fiscal issues is to have a team effort and everybody be aware, everybody be on board and understand, because you're gonna have people that when they're not aware and don't have the information, they're not gonna understand why decisions are being made the way they're being made.
Absolutely, and, we're looking at possible increases for the medical benefits and so forth, and whether or not, like Mr. Angel said, there may not be an opportunity for a little bit of a raise. And I've always been adamant about what we do for one, we're going to do for all, because everyone is going through financial crisis right now, and we just want to make sure that we're doing what we can to help our employees here at Weslaco ISD.
Yeah, that is why we wanted to mention it today, beginning with, we might be able, we might not, we might have to increase it, at least to let you know and the community can hear it.
Well, the good thing is, like, instead of looking at the glass half empty, look at it half full, is what they say, right? They're getting the 2,000 stipend
Retention
that
stipend.
year, and then the following year, we also have another stipend.
That's 1,000.
And then hopefully, in
30
the
years.
year after that,
Right.
we'll be all in a better place where they can get a pay raise. But for now, like the stipend would count kind of as a pay raise.
Correct.
That's
Prior to
correct.
the
So that-
stipends that they had
Right.
gotten, they
It's like
received
your
what,
stipend is your
5,000?
pay raise
Right.
next,
3,000.
this next year.
3,300 or, what was it?
3,000.
This year,
And then
3,000.
500 for the vaccine.
No, the 3 years ago.
Whoa, no,
The
that was
big
a
one.
The five-
Up to
those
4,000
5%.
for some
With
people.
House bill?
You know, one of the things I was asking too is if maybe you can get us this information is, I know that we've had a lot of staff retire, we've had a lot of staff leave, but the reality is that, you know, like you said, our ADA is coming in at around 13,500 and change. I think, what was the last?
840.
840, 13,840 for the ADA. But your service, you have a staff that's before, according to the budgeting tools, was well over 17,000. Okay, at the staff levels, it was well over 17,000. So when you think about that, you know, we just have to understand the school finance system where, and it's been like that for years. It's actually been like that for a while now. Even pre-COVID. So you have 17,000 staff at 17,500, I think it was, or 800, your staffing levels, but you're only getting paid for 13,000.
Right.
And at the end of the day, we all got to work together to fix that problem, you know? And so, it's like I tell everyone, I was talking to somebody in the community because they were asking questions. I think the last time we had a discussion, I had some calls, and I told them it's simple. It's like a restaurant that hires staff to serve 1,000 plates, but to serve 1,000 plates that day, but they're only really selling like 600. How long are they going to stay open? You know, that's simple economics there. And so that's why I was saying through attrition, hopefully, you know, everyone's on board, you know, directors, principals, coordinators, and they understand we're all working together, because I know they're going to call HR and give them a hard time, you know, because I work in the district and I have staff, and when you lose them, you want to fill them. And they're just going to have to understand that when HR says, you know, right now we're working to maybe make some adjustments or moves, or the superintendent, that we're all working together, you know.
And they have, they've
Yeah.
posted, HR directors and other staff, administration from other, like federal programs have had staffing meetings with every principal. I told the team, I said,
Right.
the district must have those staffing meetings because they weren't happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so, those were initiated this year, and they sat down and principals were told, you know, this is the amount of staff you're gonna need, X amount of teachers, and that's it. And then some were told you're over X number.
Right.
And so that's how we're trying to balance.
Oh, that's
And-
good.
Yeah.
And let's get them back in school. And I mean, share the word, you know, positive.
Yeah.
Get them back in. That's how we can counter it, really.
Mm-hmm.
We need our kids back.
I'm sorry, just one side note, just so you know, one thing that we did a little differently, the voluntary transfer pool went out just prior to the break.
Oh, yes. That's right.
So what we did is, some campuses were frozen and were not an option to be transferred to because we know they're already over.
Okay.
In addition to that, at the elementary and middle school levels, we put a pool in place that some individuals are just willing to volunteer into the pool. Again, that doesn't mean they're losing a job. It just means they're willing to take a chance and say, listen, if you need help and you need it in these kind of areas, I'm willing to go wherever is needed.
That's good.
So that's where we're looking at. In addition, one thing that we can say that did help us this year balance numbers up was VLA. However, Mr. De Los Santos, you said it, we budget, and Mr. Sanchez likes to make sure he tells us this in cabinet, that 13,800 is supposed to pay for everyone, because so many times at HR, we'll say to them, well, this could be this amount of teachers or this amount of staff. He said, you're forgetting you've got everybody else you're responsible for too when it comes out of this, so we have to be careful at all levels.
Thank you.
I think, I was just thinking, this is where it comes, like working with the city, working with the county, you know, all those new people coming in and building homes and bringing their families in, just to really set up some, I don't know, like, events, community events where we can work with them and try to, I don't know, give away a little WISD, just anything to try to get them in would be great. I don't know who part
Sometimes
of our
you have,
public relations.
sometimes you have teams of district staff, you know, teachers, employees, all employees, that you team them up and by school, and they do block walks of their each zone.
Yeah.
And you have your PR department working on literature that's highlighting, you know, and you're building that relationship with your own community. It's all about people. It's all about building these relationships with every principal. Every campus has their zone.
Right.
And so they should be walking it. They
the
should be
community leaders,
visiting.
yeah.
They should
We
be.
need to do more of
you know,
that,
And that's
definitely.
not happening.
No, right now we just count on, throw it
Daycares,
out on
private
Facebook
schools.
Oh, they
or
showed up,
social
they showed
media.
up.
No, let's
Especially
go out
daycares,
there
too.
and maybe I don't
There's-
know, who's in charge of that in our.
I would call them block walks. So
Okay.
in another district, we organized block.
So every campus would kind of be in charge of their zone.
Zone.
With all the
Okay.
growth going to the north, you know,
Yeah, there's a lot of growth.
growth.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to get them early.
For
It's
Silva,
got,
Ibarra,
it's the,
Rico, all
with the little
those.
ones.
And like right now, we're signing up the pre-K, right? So right now's the time for them to go out there and do that.
That's another initiative that the district can launch.
Well, we couldn't do it this past 2 years because of COVID.
Because of
Right,
COVID.
but now we
Before,
can.
But
before it
now
was
you-
done, there was
we can.
walkthroughs from,
You could.
you know.
Yeah, because
Block
from
walks
March to
before.
July that's that recruitment window, March to
Right.
July. Yeah, that's the window you're out there trying to let parents know we're open for business. And like everyone's saying here, if you look at the data, there's a lot of students that we're not losing, they're just never showing up.
They're not
And,
just
and
not-
those parents are really missing out because the data speaks for itself. We just got to be better at marketing it,
I
especially
know,
our
but like
pre-K
the
first
billboards
and
over
second.
at the Lackey Stadium, you know, those are very eye-catching. I know right now they have, I don't know, at the sports, I think, or the band, I'm not sure who's up there.
The trumpets.
The
The-
trumpet
they-
player and then the counseling, the
Yes, maybe we
social
can,
emotional.
because at this time that we have enrollment, you know, put something up there to get them in.
A
At
few-
one time, we had looked into a digital.
A digital, I was about to say, we
Right.
had looked
Yeah,
at the
that's-
cost difference. I mean, the only thing was, we had to put just,
Yeah.
our kids or our teachers, whatnot, we couldn't, I don't think we could put advertisement on it, is what we were told, but, you know, I think when you take the cost of that banner that's only up, let's say, a month or two, and then you bring it down and you're putting another one up, I think just having a digital board where you can just run something.
Isn't there one in front of Lowe's around there somewhere?
I had-
A digital one?
There's one in front of Lowe's.
Reina's Barbecue, no?
There's one in front of,
How does that work? We just rent
Reina's.
it out?
Yeah, I think so.
yeah,
Oh,
but,
that's right.
and then there's one in front of, the Motel 6 by Tractor Supply.
Okay,
So I
so
think
there's
there's like
several.
3
There's
boards
several.
from airport.
We can
to
have Carlos
Westgate.
over there look into advertising and.
I think I brought up to Carlos también, and I kind of got it at the mall. And I took my daughter to the mall, and I was waiting for her to come out of her store.
Oh, you're brave.
And that, yeah, I know. I didn't go in there. I just said, you call me when I need to pay, and I'll go in there. But you know, outside of the store, they had a large screen like that, almost the size of the one we have there. And I hadn't seen that before at the mall. And that store, that clothing store had that screen outside. So I was drinking coffee waiting for her. I was watching their commercials, and I caught myself, and I thought, you know, we have prime property at very heavy intersections, like on Pike, on Pike and Westgate, and you got some Houston, you got some on major roads.
Yes.
And instead of having the marquees where it just has like a digital thing, and if you had something maybe at some little, I don't know, you know, maybe that, I don't know who I was talking with, and I was just throwing it out there. Maybe that might be something we can invest in, where we're consistently showing what's going on in our classrooms, actual commercials and videos running. And-
Yeah, good evening, President Cuellar, Dr. Velez, I am here. Talking about the marketing, and we do, you know, we did look into the digital billboard several years ago, and as far as trying to offset some of the costs with advertising, we did try, look into that. And so the rules have kind of changed with that, so that's something that we could look into, but that was maybe about 4 years ago.
Okay.
And we haven't had a chance to go back and look at the opportunities of doing a digital billboard. But we do have the vinyl. We have the vinyl billboards that we put up there. We put them up, you know, every month. And it was like last month, I believe, we had Iris Acevedo, who was, not Iris, I'm sorry, but Edith Acevedo, who was one of our winners of one of our art competitions across the Rio Grande Valley. And we put her up there as an elementary child because we do know that we need to target the parents, you know, of the younger children, because that's where we're losing our kids, is at the elementary level. So we are aware that we do need a market to target that area. And we also try to advertise like at the movie theater. I know people don't go to the theater as much as they used to, but the ones that do go there and are still going there, those are the families.
Right.
Those are the ones with the young kids. So you will see our advertising at the movie theater, because that is our number one market, is the younger families, the ones with the younger kids that are sending them to elementary.
Carlos.
So there is a strategy involved. You know, maybe we do need to, you know, change it up a little bit and look back at what we're doing. But the past 2 years, all we've been doing as far as, you know, K-West and marketing and videos has really been just COVID. Not just COVID, but a lot of it has been COVID. So we do need to look, you know, at what we're doing with marketing. I, you know, totally agree. And especially this year, because we're coming off of 2 years where we didn't really have a chance to do marketing. And really look at maybe some type of recruitment team, because that is what the charter schools do as well. They go to these flea markets, they go to these areas around town, and they're actually signing up kids out in the community, and that's how they're getting them to go to the charter schools as well, is to have some type of ground game. And so 2 years ago, we did do a lot of block walking, and we're out there in the community trying to bring kids, sign up kids, and bring them back to WISD as well. So there is something in place. We just need to, probably focus more on that and some other things with our marketing.
Carlos,
Yes.
can you look at the airports that we have here in the valley?
Yes.
I know when I walk off the Harlingen, when I fly back in, there's a huge competitor that is always there. Maybe something like that, reaching out to other communities since we do have open enrollment.
I thought you were
It
gonna say a
doesn't-
plane.
Yeah,
flying.
it doesn't necessarily have to be, here in Wesco, but maybe we can reach out, in between other communities where we can target that
Absolutely.
community, and show all the great things that are happening here in Wesco.
Absolutely. Yes,
Carlos,
we can definitely look into that.
Hey,
Thank
sir,
you.
I had a question also, sir, for you. How do I put this in the right way? I always have to think. I know that you do a great job on social media. I've seen it all the time on Facebook, but Facebook is mostly for people my age. I'm not gonna say what my age is, but it's for
Younger than me.
because we got to look at, okay, who are our pre-K, our 3-year-olds, our pre-K and our kinder parents. They're anywhere from 18 to about 25, mainly on average. So are they still, is that social media platform, are there, well, I know you're an expert in this, but is there other platforms that we're using other than Facebook to target that crowd? Because I know there's millennials, exennials, and things like that. So,
Yes.
so
Yes, very good question. Very good question. And so we do have our social media on Facebook, and that is going to be, your younger crowd. I'm sorry, not your younger crowd, maybe your older crowd that you're looking at. And we're starting to see more of the kids, they're graduating from high school, back on Facebook.
okay.
But also we're on Instagram, and that's where you are going to see your younger families and your younger moms. And the mom, studies have shown that they're the ones that make all the decisions, where the kids are going to go to school. And we're also on Twitter, and we're also on YouTube. We haven't had an opportunity to do anything on TikTok. We're still looking at that. That's probably going to be our next social media outlet to be on is TikTok and Snapchat. But we are, trying. We are always looking at where we're going to be on social media. We're always looking at the latest trends. But we are on Instagram, and we're also on Twitter and Facebook as well.
Well, I
Okay.
think you can gather some of our employees for that TikTok and make a great dance to come on over to Wesco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
And I'm thinking just when we ran our campaign and we went through the elections, having signs, because not everybody's on social media, really,
Correct.
driving around town, everyone drives around town, goes to HEB, just having them in having just regular old sign in a very high traffic area, I think that'll be even easier, probably. So, and right now's the time, because right now that we're enrolling, right now, let's work on it.
Absolutely,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Thank you very much for the
Thank you.
information. Good points.
Okay, I want to make one more comment related to compensation. We have considered this in the past, and in the event TA does approve something for us, that things improve, and we're not able to approve a pay raise by the time we approve the budget, and there's money available somehow, or later on in the year, because of whatever it is, that we're able to come up with an amount that we could pay to employees, we could call a public hearing.
Right.
Advertise it, just like we advertise the budget, or 14 days in advance, notify the paper twice, and we notify this a public hearing to discuss the budget, an amendment to the budget for a possible pay increase for employees, one-time incentive payment, something like that. That can be done.
Okay.
In the event that there's money available later on, after the budget is approved. We can still do that, something if the money is available.
Okay.
Okay, on the last slide for the budget, we'll schedule, we have in the timeline, 3 additional budget workshops and 1 required public hearing to discuss the proposed budget and tax rate. We'd like to have the budget approved by June 28th, the last Tuesday in June. The certified property values will be issued by the appraisal district on July 25th. Then the TEA will certify our M&O compressed tax rates in August. After we get the property value, they do a survey at the beginning of the month, and they calculate all the property values and everything, and they say, this is your tax rate. So we'll provide, we think, what it is based on the template we use, and they will certify it. They'll tell us, this is what you're gonna use. So we'll know by that time. And we'd like to hire Mo Casey and Associates to review our tax recalculations. That is a state funding consulting firm from Austin. They helped us a long time ago whenever we did the tax ratification election. And then some school districts use them throughout the year, throughout the years to check on numbers. But we can ask them to double check our numbers before we come to the board. And then we'll need to have one more budget workshop in a special meeting or a regular meeting in August to approve the proposed tax rate
In April.
for fiscal year 22-23, which will happen in August.
Oh, in August.
And any amendment, and an amendment to the budget if needed, depending on the certified property value that we'll get on July 25th. Because we're approving the budget with uncertainties on values, on tax rates. That is one of the difficulties with moving the fiscal year to June 30.
Okay.
But depending on what we get on property values and tax rate, we'll probably have to have a budget amendment. And for right now, the next budget workshop is scheduled for Tuesday, April 19th, before the regular board meeting. Any other comments on the budget?
Oh, good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Andres.
Thank you, sir.
I was looking at August 9th.
Item 5, presentation by delinquent tax attorneys on the collection report for September 2021 through February 2022. Dr. Valdez?
Yes, we do have our representatives here for the presentation of the school district delinquent tax collections comparisons.
Good
You may
evening.
proceed.
Good evening, Dr. Valdez, President Cuellar, and honorable members of the board. For the record, my name is Hiram Gutierrez. I'm a partner with Purdue, Brandon Fielder, Collins and Mott, your delinquent tax firm. And I'm here to present you with a couple of reports. One of them is a history of the collections here at Weslaco ISD, with also what the delinquent tax roll has been for the last 11 years, and other entities surrounding Weslaco ISD. And following that will be the delinquent tax report for the first 6 months of this fiscal year. Okay, the first slide here represents the collection rates for the last 10 years. The bars to the left on red are the older years, 2011, starting with 2011, 2012. Another firm represented Weslaco ISD back then. Then in 2013, 2014, they ended the fiscal year with a collection rate of 26.43. Then in 2014, 2015, they switched over to Purdue Brandon. And the reason for the multicolored bar there is that both firms were collecting during that year. The other firm had what's called a wrap-up period, so they were still handling some of the collections. And as you can see, collections went up to 29.03 that year, followed by 27.48, and as you can see, in the high 20s. And then in 2019, during COVID, the first year of COVID, we did have a significant drop that year. Went down to 20.26, but this last year we went back up to 28.89. Now, usually people look at collection rates, what's the collection rate to see how the firm is doing. But another very important factor in determining the effectiveness of your collection program is what's happening with the delinquency, what's owed to the school district. And a little bit of history here. Before around 2008, taxing entities were struggling just to keep the delinquency from growing too much, because year after year, the delinquency just kept on growing and growing. What happened around 2008, couple of things for the school district. First of all, you had rate compression. You had to reduce your tax rates significantly. And then in 2008, after the recession, the legislature required all new mortgages to have escrow accounts. So now the bank, the mortgage company, was in charge of paying the taxes, and the compliance went up. That meant that your current collection went up, and you were turning over less delinquency. So in this next graph, you see back in 2011, 2012, you had a delinquency owed to the school district of $5,047,000. Then the year after dropped to $4,763,000 and $452,000. And the year we took over, the delinquency at that year was $4,490,000. And as you can see, every year thereafter, the delinquency, the amount owed to the school district, has been dropping, which is a good thing, with the exception of 2021, because that's what was turned over from COVID year. But as you can see in 2021, 22, the delinquency owed to the school district is at a record low.
I want to go
I'm
back to the second, or to the slide or the page prior.
This one?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Trevino.
On the collection comparison, what are the dollar amounts? Because to me, some of these percentages present almost, I don't want to say, just different numbers. What, do you have exact number figures? For instance, 28.89 compared to 26.43 from 2013. Do you have number figures?
I don't have this in this packet, but I can provide that information. And that's the whole point of the other report that came next to it is your delinquency has been shrinking, so there's a lot less to collect. I mean, as you can see from 2011, 2012, there's about $2.25 million less to collect. So obviously, there's going to be less dollars collected. And as your delinquency shrinks, it's harder to collect for several reasons. Well, obviously, those are the more difficult accounts, the ones that are in litigation, but you also have deferral accounts that we can't go after them. We can't go collect after those because they have, as long as the property owner is alive, living in that, well, actually, they don't have to be living in that property, but as long as they qualify for a deferral, the taxing entities cannot foreclose on them. So as your delinquency shrinks, the amount of deferrals and accounts, old accounts, businesses that close and you can't collect them, that now reflects a higher percentage of what is there to supposedly collect, but it's not actually collectible. So that was the whole point of, what was the delinquent levy? How much is there to collect? And what I want to, I guess, point out that despite the delinquency shrinking significantly over the last few years, the collections have managed to stay relatively high. As long as it keeps on shrinking, I mean, it's going to become harder and harder because, again, the deferrals are going to take a larger percentage of what's out there as delinquent.
Mr. Gutierrez,
Yes,
I've
Mrs.
looked at
Stein.
other districts. I know that you put in here the people around us, Donna, Ed Couch, Mercedes, and McAllen to compare with
Yes.
as a collection comparison percentages. I've looked at the whole valley, not just these, and I've noticed that Weslaco is collecting compared to everybody else. Our percentage of collection is a lot less than what everybody else is collecting.
Well, I have some other entities that I'd like to show you.
Yeah, I wrote, Donna is at 31 from last year.
Yeah.
And we're at 28%, so we collected less than Donna. McAllen's at 34%, the one that's in here, and we're at 28%, so we're less than McAllen. The only ones that are lower than us are Ed Couch, Elsa, and Mercedes at 22 and 24. But everybody else, all the other districts are higher, not only last year, but I think a couple of years before. We seem to be collecting a lot less compared to everybody else.
Well, again, I want to, let me show you some of the other slides and I think hopefully it'll address those questions that you have as to what is going on with those other entities. Donna ISD, for example, you have 10 years of collections. Back in 2011, 2012 on the far left, that's when our competitor collected for Donna ISD. In 2012, 2013, we came on board in Donna ISD and collections shot up to 25. The following year to 25.57. However, during that year, they went back to our competitor, and then they went back in 2014, 2015 to Purdue, and collections went up to 31.61. Then in 2015, and in solid blue, those are Purdue collections at 26.73. Then in 2016, 2017, they switched over to our competitor, and collections went down to 24.31. And you can see the collection rates that you're looking at. But I want to point something out, going back to how much is there out there to collect and how it affects collection rates. This is the levy for Donna ISD. Contrary to what is happening in Weslaco ISD, their delinquency is actually growing. In other words, they're collecting less during the year than what is getting turned over by the new collections. So even despite the 30, 28, 31% collection rate, they're still collecting less than what is being added to the roll. So what about this new delinquency? What's the big deal about it? Well, when you get new delinquency, that is the easiest to collect, the brand new year. In fact, here like in Weslaco ISD, we were at 28.89 collection rate. If you look at just that 1 year, the new year, and I don't have that to show you here, the collection rate is over 50%, 50 or over 50%. So the more new delinquency you have, the bigger the collection rate is going to be. The older you have, what's going on with Weslaco, less brand new turnover, your collection rates are going to be difficult to keep up. And I'm going to show you some other ones where it's a perfect example of what we're talking about here. Edca Chelsea, same thing here. I mean, we were involved in a couple of years, 2014, 2015, and 2015, 2016. Collections went up while we were there. The levy in Edca Chelsea, same thing. It's pretty much stagnant and actually growing. But as you can see, the collection rates are at low 20s and teens. Excuse me a bit.
Now, I don't mean to be rude to Donna or Chelsea,
Yeah.
but I feel like we're comparing apples to oranges, kind of like we're Weslaco, yes, we,
Yeah.
it's just kind of like.
Yeah. Well, let me go ahead and McAllen ISD. McAllen ISD, the bars in blue is when we represented McAllen ISD. When we represent McAllen ISD, collection rates were in the 40% area. Now, in 2013, 2014, you see a collection rate at 31.96. What happened that year was that the hospitals had protested their values, and they only paid the undisputed amounts. So the tax roll, the delinquent tax roll, there was a suit going on, and however, on the tax roll, it was showing delinquency that was owed by the hospitals, but that was in dispute. We couldn't try to collect that year. And in fact, after they finished their litigation, it was settled favorably for the hospitals, and that money was actually just adjusted off the tax roll. Had they adjusted that off the tax roll that year, the collection rate would have been over 37%. So then what happened in 2015, 2016? They switched over to our competitor, and collections dropped to 32.52%. Now that bar is multicolored because part of that year, Purdue was collecting for McAllen ISD. In fact, we were the sole collector for the first 4 months of 2015, 2016. Excuse me. During those 4 months, the first 4 months of 2015, 2016, we had already collected 20.98% of the roll. That was an increase of 3.06 compared to the previous year. So in the last 8 months of that fiscal year, the competitor was only able to collect approximately another 13% in 8 months versus what we did in 4 months. So what's been happening to the levy at McAllen ISD? When in 2011, 2012, that year, we started with a levy of $8.5 million. The last year that we were there, we had reduced the delinquency to $5,874,000. That year was a combined year. Both firms were collecting, but the delinquency that was there was because of the work that we had done the previous year. So we had reduced it. We were the sole entity, law firm that had brought the delinquency down to that amount. And as you can see, that year after that, the delinquency went up. And this past year, 21-22, it's up to $7,016,000. So their delinquency has increased by approximately 19.5% from the last year we were there. Weslaco ISD, on the other hand, from the time that we came on board to this year, the delinquency has been reduced by 13.5%. And I think that's very significant, and it's very telling of the program that you have here, of how well it's working for Weslaco ISD. Mercedes ISD, not much here to say. I mean, it is your neighbor. We did start collecting for Mercedes ISD in 2019, 2020. That year, the collections went up to 25.54. compared to 19.54 the last year a competitor had it. And in 2020-21, collections went up to we're at 24.33. We were actually the sole collectors for Mercedes ISD for the first 11 months, and then the only combined month was August. So that was pretty much our year. And however, Mercedes ISD decided to go back to the competitor, and in the first 6 months of this fiscal year, the collections have actually dropped by 1.67%. This is the levy for Mercedes ISD, and it's pretty much been flat for a few years now. Not much to tell about that. Mission CISD, one of the things you mentioned is, the collection rates in the 30s in McAllen. Your fiscal year has an effect on collection rates. Normally, if you have a July through June fiscal year, collection rates will be higher. Mission CISD now has a July through June. McAllen has a July through June. You'll be switching to a July through June, so you'll see that collection rates are going to be a little bit higher. The numbers are going to look a little higher. And it's a little difficult to explain, but although the delinquency gets turned over to the delinquent tax attorneys on July 1st, for reporting purposes, July and August, those collections are reported as current collections. They're not reflected on delinquent tax collections. When you switch over to the July through June, all of that's going to reflect on the reports as delinquent tax collections. So it has an effect. In fact, you can see it here in the Mission CISD, because in the last 10 years, they used to be a September through August fiscal year. And as you can see, the first, 4 bar graphs, they were in the 30s. They dropped down to 28, 29. And then they switched over to a July through June. Collections went up to the 30s. So it looks like collections went up, but really it has more to do with changing the fiscal year. What has happened to Mission CISD's delinquent tax levy? Same thing. They're collecting less than what is being turned over as new delinquency. You can see there that in the last few years, the delinquency has grown by approximately $300,000 more or less. So I conclude my report. Again, I think the collections, the size of your levy, being able to control your levy reflects a very good collection program. And I open it up for any questions.
Just by I'm not a tax expert at all, but looking at the data here in front of me, and I focused on the COVID year, and I know that you said that depending on when the year starts, it affects the collections, but I'm just looking at the COVID year of everybody, just that specific year, because that was a tough year for everybody, of course. But our collections for that COVID year, compared to everybody else, we were at 20%, and the only district who was less than us collecting-wise, not the delinquents, but the collection, was Ed Couchell's at 15%. We're at 20% that year, the COVID year. Everybody else in here was able to have a higher percentage with their collections than us.
Yeah, I think, again, that reflects that your delinquent tax roll is pretty lean. You don't have a lot of fat on your delinquent tax roll.
Okay.
So when the COVID hit and the people that normally would pay and couldn't pay, it affected your delinquency quite a bit. And I want to go back to Mercedes. During COVID, when we started representing Mercedes, during COVID, Mercedes ISD, we came on board, they had their best collection year in the last 10 years during COVID. And really, it's because there was really a lot to collect in Mercedes ISD. There was a lot of fat. And that's how we were able to help Mercedes ISD's collections. Actually, they actually increased above Weslaco ISD's collection. And that's because there was a lot of fat. There was a lot of money you could go after just by making the phone calls, sending the letters, but especially making those phone calls.
I want to go back to that page 2 and the delinquent tax levy. And I'm trying to understand this, obviously, this is not my forte. But, you know, I go back to asking the question, the number figures instead of the percentages. I do have some number figures, and for instance, the 28.89% year, which was your 2021, is showing, and obviously, is showing $4.04 million of collection for that 10 years. Then I go back and look at 2013, 2014, with a competitor, and they're showing 4.52 of collection at 26.43%. And you guys are showing 28.89% and collected 4.04. They collected 26.43%, but they're showing 4.52 collections. Is that because of the amount that's bigger in collection? I'm just trying to make sense
Right,
of all
right.
of this.
When you have a levy of 10, let's just throw some round figures. Let's say you have a levy of $10 million, and you collect $5 million, then, whoa, you collected 50%. But if you have a levy of $4 million and you collect $1 million, well, you only collected 25%. But heck, I got the levy all the way down to $3 million. You only got it down to 5. So who's doing a better job? That's why I don't like to show dollars collected. It's very deceptive when you say dollars collected. Well, what were you working with? What was your levy? Yeah, that's what's important. And that's why I'm showing how is your levy going? It's not even growing. It's actually shrinking. You're seeing McAllen ISD, they're almost grew by 20%. You're shrunk by 13.5%. That's a big number. That's a big difference. And again, I'm going to pat myself in the back, but that goes to show that we're doing a very good job. We have a very good program. It's working for Weslaco ISD. And I mean, the numbers speak for themselves.
Where are we at right now? I know last year, we were at 14.89% collected. Where are we at currently right now?
I think we're about 1.4% below that, below last year. I don't know the exact number, but if February is at 14, whatever that number is, it's about 1.4 below is what I think we are below last year.
What would that be in dollar figures? Do you have that amount?
I'm sorry, I do have a collection. The next report is the collection report.
Oh, the
I
next,
apologize.
Yeah.
Should I go into the collection report?
Mr. President, item number 6. Mr. Gutierrez, proceed with number 6, discussion on delinquent tax collections.
That's the next one.
All right, well, thank you very much again, and
So we want to go and cover that under item 6, right?
Yes.
Okay. Any objections?
No.
Okay.
well, I'd like to present your report for the first 6 months of fiscal 2021-22, that being September 1st, 2021 through February 28th, 22. The program for Weslaco ISD is designed with working with taxpayers to resolve their delinquent tax problem. To that end, our local call center, bilingual call center, has handled over 3,000 phone calls involving delinquent tax accounts owed to Weslaco ISD. During the same period, we have mailed over 5,600 notices of delinquency and have updated addresses on 854 accounts. Also, we try the phone contacts, we do the mailings, we also conduct field inspections, trying to meet with a taxpayer at their home, or if it's a business personal property account at the place of business. During this period, we've conducted 119 property inspections. Once we contact the taxpayers, they're not always able to pay in full. So what we do is we enter into payment agreements, and during this period, we've entered into 32 payment agreements involving over $115,000 in base tax owed to Weslaco ISD. When all those efforts don't have the desired effect, we do proceed to litigation, always as a last resort. During this period, we have filed 58 suits involving over $440,000 in base tax owed to the school district. We also represent you in federal bankruptcies. During this period, we've been representing you in 14 bankruptcies involving over $17,900 in base tax owed to the school district. Once we take a judgment, we still try to contact the taxpayers. We send them notices. We put notices on the property, try to get their attention and let them know that this property is about to get foreclosed. However, when those efforts don't have the desired effect, we do proceed to tax sale. And during this period, we put up 9 properties up for tax sale. 2 of those resulted in payment agreements involving over $12,880 in base tax owed to the district. 7 properties were sold, bringing in over $36,900 owed to the school district. At tax sale, if the property does not have a winning bid, it gets struck off to the taxing entities. In other words, the taxing entities become the owner of the property, and then they can sell it at a tax resale or a private bid if somebody wants to file a private bid. We have not taken any private bids during this period, but we have conducted resales and sold 6 property, bringing in over $47,878 owed to the school district. Now, during this period, we have collected a grand total of $501,000 in base tax and an additional $236,000 in interest owed to the school district for a grand total of $738,000. In addition to collecting delinquent taxes for the school district, we also represent you with audit and appeals work. What this is it maximizes the state aid owed to the school district. The state allows you to basically take a look back up to 3 years to see if there's been changes to the tax roll that would benefit the school district. In other words, capture additional state aid for the school district. During this period, we've filed an audit for the 2019 tax year. That audit was accepted by the comptroller and certified by the TA, and we expect the school district to receive an additional $649,000 in state aid as a result of this audit. We have also filed an audit to the comptroller that it has not been yet accepted or certified, but we expect that it will bring in an additional $66,000 in state funds to Weslaco ISD. In total, we anticipate a total recovery of $715,000 as a result of audits filed during this period. And that is my report, and I'd like to open it up for any other questions that you may have.
Well, I just wanted to say that, I'm glad in the presentation you discussed the pre-litigation procedures, steps that you have, because I think that with COVID-19 and all the difficulties that people are facing out there, that they're given and afforded the appropriate opportunity to, try to take care of their taxes, whether in payments or some other type of program that you all offer. So I was going to ask that earlier.
Yeah.
But I saw the second piece, so I waited. But I just
Yes.
wanted to say that we are giving our citizens options, and we're just not, going straight to litigation and removing them from their homes. And they have options. So
Yeah,
thank you.
we do everything we can to avoid litigation, try to work with the taxpayers and make that contact. Maybe there's a problem going on, sicknesses, a lot of people, suffered losses, people passed away, and we're doing every effort to, if they have a workable plan, we're gonna wait, we're gonna work with them.
Thank you.
I'm looking at the federal court representation, 14 bankruptcy cases that we were represented in to fight for $17,000. And I'm thinking, is it costing us more to pay the lawyer to be present for 14 bankruptcy cases than to collect $17,000? But it's contingent, or how does this work?
It's contingent. I'm glad you mentioned that it's a contingency fee-based fee. And I'm glad you mentioned it, because on bankruptcies, sometimes the bankruptcy court does not award attorney's fees. If the bankruptcy court does not award attorney's fees, we don't collect a penny. It goes straight to the school district. And that's not the case with everyone. I mean, sometimes they'll take a piece of what belongs to the school, what's coming to the school district, and collect from there. If we don't get awarded anything, we don't get paid.
Oh, okay. Interesting. All right.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take it to item 7. Discussion on district tax rates. Dr. Wallace?
Thank you, Mr. President. The next item is on our district tax rates. And I'll need somebody to advance the slide deck. Okay, so before Mr. Sanchez comes up and discusses the district rate, tax rates for Weslaco ISD, the past and the current, I thought I'd give everyone in the audience and board and even myself, all of us, just a refresher, an overview of public school finance for Texas. And this first slide, I am indicating that funding for Texas public schools comes from 3 main sources. And of course, one is from our local school district property taxes, from state funds, and from federal funds. And there you see a pie chart from the 2018-19 school year, that's in billions for Texas public education funding that academic year. And that's just an example, so you can see the breakdown of that pie. And you see how, for example, in that year, local school district property taxes generated 50% of the funding, and in the state, 44%, and in federal was, a small piece of that pie, right, 6%. So the majority of the funding does come from local and state.
Right.
On the next slide, and that's why district tax rates are so important, right? Because that's tied to public school finance funding. And the next slide, Mr. Sanchez. To give a brief history of what's happened with Texas public school tax rates. In 2019, HB House Bill 3 was passed as part of the 86th Texas legislature. And that statute included the implementation of a tax rate compression. So districts were required for the 1920 fiscal year to reduce their Tier 1 tax rate, which is the M&O tax rate. So by statute, by school finance law, we had to reduce that M&O rate. And then the tax rates for fiscal year 2019-20 were compressed by the state compression rate of 93%. So all the districts had to reduce their M&O by 93%. So it was a reduction of 7 percentage points. And then the M&O tax rates for tax year 2020, and even to now, are still being compressed. And that's to relieve the taxpayers. And you'll see later in a graph presented by TEA, Texas Education Agency, on the reason why it happened. So the next slide, Mr. Sanchez, indicates the why, the reason why the Texas legislature and of course TEA chose to do that tax rate compression. And it was really implemented because of 2 recommendations from the Texas Commission on Public School Finance. And one was to create a long-term systemic balance between state and local share of district foundation funding for public education. Because remember, you have state and local providing most of the funding to Texas public school districts. And what ended up happening, what started happening was local taxpayers were providing more of the funding than the state. And so they're trying to create this long-term systemic balance between both local and state. And then the second reason is because they want to reduce the growth rate of property taxes.
Yeah.
And we know that the rate in property taxes is escalating, right? And the next slide is the visual representation from fiscal year 2006 up to fiscal year 2018, and this is from TEA. And if you look at the blue section of the bar, that's the state funding. That's the percentage, right, that the state would provide. Look at the orange. The orange portion is local. That's what our local taxpayers were providing. So you see how there's an imbalance when it started, look at like 2011 on, even earlier, in 2008, there's now an imbalance between local and state contributing to school districts' funding formulas, right? So the state noticed that, legislature noticed that, TEA, and so they came together and then they decided to do the compression of the local tax rates. So that gives you an idea of the why it needed to be done, why districts had to, in 2019, reduce the M&O. And so the final slide I have, it tells you that local property tax compression does not impact school district funding. So prior to HB 3, and local property tax collections were like at $1 for each, the valuation, right, of I forgot the.
Initially it was 150, and then they reduced.
Correct, and so they reduced it from $1 to 93 cents. But even if they, the first bar graph there, where local property tax collections at $1, then whatever entitlement the district is to receive, the state aid is applied. And then when the compression happens, and it's dropped down by 7 percentage points, which takes it down to 93 cents, you see how it's lower tax property tax collected, but the state aid is increased to still meet the formula entitlement due to, which is based on our students that are enrolled. That's based on enrollment.
They made up for the loss of tax rate.
Yes, for the loss of property values, tax collections, state aid kicks in.
Right.
And in the final slide here, because we're going to start talking M&O and INS, so that way our audience, what are M&O and INS tax rates, and how do they relate to the Foundation School Program? And that's, Foundation School Program is the state providing that it's the program that, while the state provides funding for the basic, for operations for M&O, for maintenance and operations of a district. So a school district's property tax rate is made up of an M&O tax rate, and if applicable, an interest and sinking INS tax rate. As its name suggests, the M&O tax rate provides funds for the maintenance and operations costs of a school district. The INS tax rate provides funds for payment on the debt that districts issue to finance facilities and other capital expenditures. The calculation of both Tier 1 and Tier 2 is tied to a district's M&O tax rate, and of course, Mr. Sanchez will get into talking about specifics of that. And so the calculation of facilities funding is tied to a district's INS tax rate, right? So M&O is our maintenance operations, it's to fund the operations of the district, and INS is to pay the debt that the district.
The debt for facilities.
The debt for facilities, correct. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Sanchez, and do remember that Mr. Sanchez and I spoke, and we've been briefing about our tax rate and studying it closely. And so the recommendation is moving forward, because I told Mr. Sanchez, we need to start already thinking about the tax rate for the next, for moving forward, right? And of course, you have to wait for the state, for TEA with the compression tax rate, what it's going to be. And, but my recommendation and Mr. Sanchez's recommendation is to engage MOC KC as a consultant to provide guidance and foresight and in projecting and also reviewing, right? Is this the best rate? Do we move pennies? Do we not? And so forth. So Mr. Sanchez is going to now I'll turn it over to you so you can discuss the different rates and in comparison with other districts.
Thank you, Dr. Valdez. Okay, I have some slides here that show tax rates for the same 5 districts that we had in the tax collections report, which are Mission, Mercedes, McAllen, Edgar Chalsa, and Dana, and Weslaco. And they're from the tax rate for 2021-22 all the way to 2016-17. And we have the M&O rate, the INS rate, total rate, and also the the amount of the bonds. And the board had mentioned before that other districts had more INS tax rate than we did. And I mentioned at the time that, yeah, they had more INS tax rate because they had more debt. And I wanted to show the bonds debt that they had, and the balances that they had for those years as an explanation why the INS tax is greater. For example, on the first slide, the 21-22 tax rate for Weslaco was 94 pennies. I forget this. Thank you. It was 94 pennies for M&O, 4 pennies for INS, for a total of 98. And our debt at the end of August 31, 2021 was $38,610,000. The INS rate is calculated to generate, besides the tax revenues, enough IFA funding to pay the bonds needed for the payment of principal and interest and fees for the following year. Okay? So in our case, we only had 4 pennies, but you see right below where it says INS rate, we have 0.0799, that is 7.99 pennies, which is 8 pennies. That is the amount we needed. If we were to have a full INS tax rate, we needed 8 pennies to pay for our bonds. So that is the most that we need. I had mentioned last time it will be between 7 and 8, so for this year, we need 8 pennies. If we had raised it from 4 to 8, that is the most that we could have had, no more than that.
Okay.
No question?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I know we've talked about this before, and I know you said, well, they have a higher INS rate because of the debt that they owe. But like I said, we don't have the pennies in INS for the debt that we owe. And so
Right.
I just have one question, and I'm very curious, is that we're the only district in the valley for over 10 years that had their INS rate at 0, okay? And it's here off the interest and sinking rates for the 10-year comparison.
Right.
So Weslaco ISD is the only district, actually, there's only one other one. I'm not gonna name them, but they're not doing, and so, I'm not gonna talk about them. But, our district is, like I said, one of the only ones that had it zeroed out. And I did my research, it's my job as a board member to understand what I'm approving. And so, I understand the purpose of the INS tax rate, I understand why the state had put it there, so that way you can control borrowing within a school district. It's it's just like anybody else for the taxpayers listening right now. If I get my check, I understand that some of that check's already gone. I gotta pay the house, gotta pay the car, gotta pay daycare, gotta pay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I have monies for other expenses, entertainment, et cetera, and whatnot.
Right.
And so, I just don't grasp how financially, for so many years, it was at 0, how that's a financial benefit in any way, especially when you knew that there was a compression coming. M&O is the only one being compressed, INS isn't.
Right.
And every other district left pennies in INS or moved and transferred pennies to INS prior to the compression rate starting, so that way they didn't lose additional funding, because you're losing at a higher rate by leaving it in there. At least that's the way I'm understanding it, and that's what I'm seeing from the behavior of other districts, that they moved pennies into INS from M&O prior to the compression. And in some cases, for those that had a very high INS, they moved them back to M&O, so that when they took a hit, I guess they would still have a substantial M&O in place. I don't know, I'm just assuming, but why were we at 0 for 10 years? If it's a financial tool set by the state to monitor or, to self-monitor borrowing and debt and whatnot, why were we at 0 for so many years, and we're the only district that has zeros across the board?
Over the years in the history of Weslaco, the boards have not wanted to increase the tax rate. When Dr. Rivera was superintendent, he asked many times, and the board, they didn't want to increase the tax rate. So we were lower. Our rate was 104 when everybody else was at 117.
Right.
So when the chance was talking to Hilltop Securities, Chris Vella's company, and Mocase and Associates.
Right.
Back then, Mr. Canché was the CFO, and Dr. Rivera, they contacted him, and he came and studied it, and they made the recommendation to the board to do the tax classification election to move the 9.97 pennies of INS to the M&O rate, because the M&O under the school foundation program will generate more funds
Right, yeah, the golden
than it would on the IFA. So whenever you get your money, you're going to get at least $1 million more. You can
Right.
throw some money to INS to pay the debt, and you keep an extra $1 million. It was a win-win situation. That is why it was done in white school districts. A lot of other districts have done it to do a tax certification election. So they have reversed it after 2 years or so.
Right.
We kept it because it was giving us more money, and that is why we left it.
And see, and during that, the tree that they call the TRE, right?
Right.
Right. I remember, because I sat in those meetings, and like I said, I always told people in board meetings, I paid attention, and one of I remember specifically that they warned the districts. They said, when you move the pennies over out of INS, don't lock yourself into long-term debt. Fix what you can with the additional revenue that's being brought in. Do your maintenance, fix your ACs, roofs, et cetera, whatever you can do.
Right.
Do that. Don't lock yourself into long-term debt. Don't go out and hire, okay, additional staff, because it's a false number. In reality, that money is still owed, even though it's embedded in M&O. They said, don't hire, don't take loans. Those are the main two. Don't hire staff and don't take loans.
Right.
Fix what you need to fix, and
Yes.
because compression's coming. I mean, knowing all that,
Well-
I got it when I listened to it, and I was an employee. And I mean, that's why I'm asking, like, financially, because you're the CFO.
Right.
Where is the, I'm just trying to say, where's the logic of saying, okay, I know there's a compression coming and we're gonna lose pennies at a higher rate by us just leaving everything in M&O, or Hilltop financial advisors as well too, because you said that they were part of this whole process. Where is like me, I'm thinking of, okay, in a business, if you tell me, if you leave it in this account, you're gonna get taxed by the government at a higher rate, so you need to move it over here. Well, I wanna move what I can.
Right.
So why did we just Thelma and Louise it and go straight to the cliff and say, well, we're gonna leave it in INS, M&O, and we're not gonna move anything to INS? I just, that's what I wanted, like, somehow, can you tell me and describe what was the actual logic behind that decision of leaving everything there to be reduced at a higher rate? And
Yeah.
we're the only ones that did it.
The transfer of the pennies happened in 2011, 2012.
Right.
The compression rates were not
In
the
effect, yet.
horizon at the time. That
Right.
just-
That's
recent.
HB3,
Right.
House Bill 3.
That's new, so that was
Right.
not at the time.
Right.
So when this thing came up, that's when 1819, if you look at the slide that I have there,
Mhm.
this is the 1819 rate for the 1819 year. We were at 114.
Right.
West Mission, Mercedes, Edgar Santana were at 117, and McAllen at 115.
Right.
McAllen had zero, because they had moved the money, like I said, through a TRE to the M&O side. Edgar Church had 8.8 pennies, Dana 8.8, Mercedes had 21, Mission almost 17, we only had 2. We needed 7 pennies at the time. We didn't do it. For that year, that was the year before.
Right. But we didn't do it because.
And we didn't know about the compression where we did this.
Okay, but we didn't move pennies because
It was giving
if
us
you,
more money in the M&O than in
Right.
the INS.
but if you move monies out of M&O, can you move monies out of M&O or you can't?
You
Because
can move
it's
it to
because of
M&O.
staffing.
Well, we're moving, you're talking rate of
No, I'm just
dollars.
talking about why we just left it all in M&O. Why did we leave it in M&O? I mean, I understand the whole, the golden pennies, I understand when HB3 came into effect. But knowing that you're gonna get a compression, what was holding us back from moving it? Was it because we didn't have surplus?
Oh,
Because
okay,
we
okay,
had
hold on.
staff costs?
That's what I'm trying to get to.
Okay,
So, the golden pennies and all that, that's on the M&O side. That had nothing
Yeah.
to do with the INS. That's what we're gonna generate. The compression came and lowered those gold pennies and everything else along the way. The idea of the compression was to help taxpayers
Right,
pay
understand.
less taxes. And it was not to affect negatively school districts, like Dr. Valdez said. The state made up the money we lost on taxes with more state aid. So we were supposed to help the taxpayers. That was the 1819 tax rate. This is in July, August, when we had just had a flood in 2019. The year before, we had the big flood of 2018 that affected us on transportation. At that time, our community was hurting a lot. And one of the reasons we did not look at increasing the INS rate by just increasing it, not bringing the money back, but increasing it.
Right.
Because by moving it back, we would have lost money in the M&O side.
Right.
Okay, we would have lost money. So if we would have lost more money here, then we would not gain over here. But we're not going to lose money from the compression only. Yeah, the compression didn't affect us. Because, like I said, the state made up the money.
Right.
But we could have moved it over here as one way, but lose money here. So we didn't want to do that part. And raise the INS taxes, like we had raised 2 pennies, and I had tried to raise it again, and the board said, no, right now the community is hurting, we didn't want to raise it. The following year, 1920, again, I tried to do for the 2021 year, and Dr. Rivera said, Andres, the community is hurting, let's leave it alone. So then the following year, for this year, 21, we raised 2 more pennies to 4 pennies. So that is why we didn't raise it back then, because the idea was to help taxpayers with a reduced tax. And we're saying that we're gonna go, some of these districts, you go now to the next slide.
Right.
Look at the 117. Next slide. Went the wrong way here. Sorry.
Well, let me ask while you're getting the slide ready.
Monday.
What's the goal of House Bill 3? What's the goal of House Bill 3 with the MNO? At the end of the day, is it something they're going to continue till they eliminate
House Bill 3?
MNO? Right. Like, what is the whole purpose of the bill when the reduction in compression? How many years are we looking at?
Right now,
Because-
at least one more year, this year, next year.
This year and
This biennium.
And then it stops because we hit that
It
threshold.
depends on what they say.
the legislature.
This
And
depends on
this came
legislator. Okay.
because property values have been going up.
Increasing, right.
And they said, if you go over 2.5%, which I
Right.
had mentioned to the board, we're gonna compare to tax rates.
Right.
And then they came up with a 4.01 pennies. There's a formula that has that number.
Right.
And if you go higher, as you know, our rates were 10% last year. The
Mm-hmm.
year before was 8.3%. So the compression affected us. Some districts get affected more than others because the values go up more than others.
And those
like
that don't have growth in value stay stagnant because they don't have to take a reduction, right?
Right. So there.
But in our case, we're growing exponentially, commercially and residentially.
Right.
And probably for the next easily,
The
Well,
appraisal
wait,
district,
2
the
to
chief
3 years.
appraiser told me, when we were doing the refunding of the bonds, we made with the rating companies, and they always have those questions, so I asked him, Mr. Gonzalez, I think that's his name, what do you see in the horizons for increase of at least 5% for the next 2 years, which is the 22, 23, 23, 24. So right now, we're looking at least 5% increase, perhaps more.
right.
And that is why, if you look at here,
Mhm.
in this presentation, 1819 went up. The following year, 1920, Mission went to 106.8, Mercedes 106.8, McAllen 105.8, Edgar Chesa 106.8, and Dana 106.8. They all went down, but the compression affected them the same way because they were at 117. And then the INS, Mission left it alone, Mercedes left it alone, McAllen looks like they moved the money from MNO to INS. They didn't swap it back. They raised the INS, which is what we didn't do here. McAllen at that time, they didn't have the effects of the flood like we did. They had it in prior years. Edgar Chelsea increased it as well. See, they had 8 pennies, and so did Dana. So they both raised it. Dana only raised it 7 pennies. So none of those districts got affected like we did. Mercedes did a little bit, like we did, and they raised it some. They didn't raise it more because I spoke to the CFO, and they said we had $1 million on INS fund balance, so that allowed us to pay the fund. You see the Mercedes rate the next year? Went up 34 pennies. He said, we run out of fund balance, so we had to raise more pennies to raise the payment of debt.
Right.
You see the debt they have? Almost what we have, the 50 million.
And
So,
sorry.
so I was just gonna say, in short, you're saying that regardless of how many pennies we lose in MNO in the next 2 years with compressions, because we're gonna probably get them because like I said, our property values are going up with the local, the county appraisal
We're gonna
districts and locally.
go, right.
We have a lot of growth within the community, so you're ensuring, as our CFO, that regardless of how many pennies we lose, and regardless of how many we have in IN, but mostly MNO,
MNO,
that
we're
we're
not
gonna
losing
be
money.
fine because we're gonna receive the same amount of funding in return and from the state.
Yes, they'll make it up, yes.
So they're gonna make it up.
Yes,
Okay,
the-
regardless of how many
the-
pennies
The
we lose.
INS is different, like I said,
Right.
and I have some calculation to show you on the transfer that we didn't do.
So I'm just worried that I don't wanna get to a spot where we're gonna get to INS and say, okay, you know what?
Oh.
We're gonna have to raise taxes.
I'm getting there.
That's-
There's a
that's-
change in the law that was made recently. That districts, and that came with House Bill 3. They say a district cannot raise an MNO tax rate
Right.
that has excess funds to be transferred to pay debt.
Right, you can't.
Because we've been doing that for a while. So our budgets, you remember, our budgets in the past had a transfer budgeted.
Right,
MNO
yes.
transfer to INS. So we started budgeting because we knew we couldn't do it. So whatever we raised in MNO was to balance the budget. That's it. And then we transfer money from fund balance,
Right.
which is from prior years. Money from fund balance, considered surplus funds, and that is approved. The Attorney General approved it, and we did it. But now TA said, you know what? We're going to start looking at the loophole. That's a loophole in the law that more cases took advantage and told us, and a lot of districts did. Nobody continued like we did for a long time. But now we cannot do it anymore. So we
That's one of the
checked.
things I know, because I remember you presented that to me back in December of 2020. You know, and that's why I asked, I said, why are you transferring every single year? And then you explained it. But that's why the discussion came up, why don't we start moving pennies already if we can? But that was my only question. That's why, what prevented us from doing that if we know we got to do it? Because I know that you're losing M&O and you're getting it back from the state. But what happens when you don't pick up your INS? Or what happens when M&O gets to a point that you no longer, now with the state law, you can't transfer it out anymore?
Right. Now that we need to raise the INS. So we're gonna look at going up, depending on what it is, maybe 3.5, 4 pennies, increase the INS rate. To pay the bond. Yes, ma'am.
I was like, I've been listening to everything, and I'm not an expert the way Mark is, but
I'm not
I'm
either.
looking at the, I'm just analyzing the data here, and I'm looking at how fast we're paying off the debt that we have compared to everybody else. And in 2015, which was 5 years ago, to right now, we are paying off what we owe a lot slower than everybody else, because we have paid back in the last 5 years, 13 million. Everybody else that we have here on these charts has paid back a lot faster and a lot more than what we are paying off. For example, Mission, we're at 13 million. Mission paid back in the last 5 years, 25 million. And Mercedes paid back 22 million. McAllen paid back 29 million. Ed Couch, there's nothing there, so I'm assuming they paid off everything from 36 to nothing. They paid 36 off. And then Donna paid off 27. And we're at 13, so we're paying off, we're trickling like a little drop compared to everybody else who's paying off. So I'm thinking in the future, what am I doing for who's gonna sit up here? You know, because we're not gonna be here forever. Or what are we doing to get rid of our debt, to have new projects or new things come in? Because this is what concerns me, how slow we're paying everything off compared to everybody else.
The reason we're doing that, and I cannot speak for other school districts, why they do the way they do it, and it has to do with the way their bonds were set up. The structure of our bonds, when they're issued, they are, and I need to get you a report on that, and I'll get with Hilltop Security to give me the latest number now that we have the refunding done, to show the due dates are different. So some of our bonds have smaller payments now, so to make the payment consistent. And some of the dates on the other bonds get paid off, the amount get paid higher. That is the way, that little explanation I can give you. Like I said, I don't know what they're doing. We have our schedule on the bonds, and that we pay them according to what our schedule says. Principal and interest, and that's how we pay it.
Well,
We had some bonds that fall at different times.
Look at Mercedes too, because
And,
you brought up Mercedes, but Mercedes went from 66 million in debt to 44.
It's 22, yeah, they went down. Everybody went down. That's what I was saying.
And
think
Elsa's-
at the
so-
end of the day, like Andres said, in previous years and previous superintendents, if you just look at 21 and 22, and again, I'm no expert, but I'm looking at total tax rate,
Yeah, thank you.
where they're, 34 cents to our 4 cents, let's just say that's Mercedes, and they had a big drop. But that's a reflection on their taxpayers and not on our taxpayers. So, since I've been around, I know we've always had the lowest tax rate. And so, is this something we need to look at? Most definitely. But in his defense, prior to him, I think that was just it. We've just always had the lowest. And that's probably the reflection of why ours has
Not moved
not
down.
moved as fast. Had we increased it, we all know up here, we would have had a lot of people upset, because nobody likes to pay taxes.
It-
Oh, we're gonna
it-
keep
but-
paying for a long time.
But
if
the
we
thing is,
pay
though,
this
I mean-
low.
But what I'm saying is, for us to really hit it, we're gonna have to eventually, none of us like it, but we're gonna have to do it.
No, I know, and that's why the discussion here is about that, because the fact is, taxpayers need to know it's coming.
Yeah, that it's coming.
But the fact is, those two, is that that M&O and the INS, those are those are fiscal measures that are put into place so that the districts are, it's a preventive tool to keep you in check. And to run INS at zero, from what I've been reading, all the stuff that I read from the state, TASB, et cetera, you name it, you're not supposed to run your INS at zero, because you're giving like I said, you're getting your monthly check and you're not paying your bills and you're just spending away. Because really, you're left with no restrictions. You're not following those.
Right.
Those preventive tools aren't in place. And that's why when I saw the breakdown, and it's here, and I got it from the budget, we're the only district for so many years that was at zero. No one else did that. No other district had that. And I just don't understand from a financial standpoint, you being the financial advisor, you're the CFO, and then Hilltop, if you're the only district in the entire valley that ran it at zero. It just regardless of the amount of debt that they had.
Right.
But the INS is there for a purpose, and it's to make sure that
Yes,
school boards
yes.
and administrations don't go over hire because you have false money in M&O. That money's owed. You know, we had a 2016 to 2017, we had if you look at our staffing increases, they skyrocketed. And I showed that the last time I was here under the budgeting tool. That's from Region 1. Okay? But if we had pennies where they were supposed to be and didn't use a loophole, like you said, transferring from M&O to INS,
Right.
we could have self-sustained ourselves and kind of said, hey, you know what, we can't afford this, or we need to operate, because regardless, our student enrollment and ADA, whether it was 17,200 for so many years, then it just recently went down to 16,500, this year went down to 15,000 and change. But the ADA, I was looking back at even the ADA, the refined ADA at the end of the day, was pretty much almost similar for many years. You kind of were lucky because you didn't really have too much of a fluctuation for so many years. You know, you had a total enrollment steady at a certain level, give or take 100, 200, and then your ADA was also steady for so many years. Why not already make the adjustments and move pennies? Like, why not already, if we know that at least that's what I read, that you're supposed to. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but what I read from everything that I read is districts are supposed to use INS for it to be a tool.
Right, that's the idea.
On
Like
debt.
I said, we took advantage of the loophole in the law to do it.
And I think
And
the,
they were looking at it to school, check on district that were doing it,
right.
to see if they're gonna make us pay back. And
And-
if they do, we're gonna pay back with money that we got before. So if we couldn't do it before, we did it now, it ends up the same thing, except that it's at a different year. Sorry.
And again, whoever the leader was back then
2010?
was very frugal and he was very conservative.
I don't know what it was before.
And he never wanted to increase the
Right.
tax rate. So that's another reason why your leader tells you, you know what, we're not gonna move this because of this and this. You know, if this, now that if the board wants to raise taxes.
Yeah.
Before, the majority didn't, but if we need to, how many, 3 pennies would bring the district how much? Just,
1.5 million between taxes and
Okay.
IFA.
And that's not even, we were gonna be short for 9 million, right, correct?
What do you mean 9 million?
9.7, the.
Oh, the ADA, yes.
Yeah, so, and back then, Mark, yes, correct, the ADA was average 95,
And it was going up.
96%
Right.
at that time, and we had a good fund balance and so forth, but
Right.
again, the leader decided on what to do and go from there.
Yeah.
Because
And-
Mr. Sanchez noted, you stated earlier in your presentation that leadership in the business office would come forward with the recommendation.
Right.
Yes.
We need 2 more pennies here, we need
Right.
3 more pennies here, but was denied. The recommendation was denied. And then,
Except for
leadership
2
and-
years ago, I think, right?
Right.
Right.
2 pennies, or we was
Yeah, we
last
started
year?
increasing and now we're.
so they
at
were
4.
trying.
Yeah,
But
and
I wanted to
understand,
increase
'cause
it
he
2 to
mentioned
4
the superintendent that initiated, right? You said that,
Yes.
you said there's a
He would
superintendent
say-
that initiated this.
Right.
Yeah.
Very, very, very financially frugal and whatnot. But what about the person after? And then the person after that?
Right.
That's what catches you, you know what I mean? Because then once you go, yeah, and like I said, I'm gonna put accountability where it falls. So
Right.
that person initiated, the second person after that, then what's the chapter, what's the story there? And the data shows it too, as far as, how the district took off, how you still had the same, like I said, staffing levels.
Right.
And things changed during that administration. So you get yourself caught in a bind, and now how do you, and now I just want to explain to the taxpayers that because we're gonna get phone calls.
Right.
Because Weslaco, the city of Weslaco, they'll shoot down, in the past, they shot down bombs. Like, they go out there for sure to vote on that.
Yes.
I know I live in a neighborhood where once taxes come out, they're all recruiting everybody to go to the county to dispute them.
Yeah.
And that's probably most all over the city. So when we go to them and we explain that, we're gonna increase taxes because of, that's what my question was. What are you gonna tell them at the end? If you're gonna raise taxes for INS, now what are you gonna tell them? But the story has to be told, okay, this is what happened, this is how it started. We've been running at 0 for so long. We have and I've told this to people in the public, I said, we have a perfect scenario here, which isn't a major issue, because I think we're gonna be fine with the right adjustments and everybody participating. But the fact is, you have multiple variables hitting you this year. COVID-19, drop in enrollment, tax rate reductions, et cetera. Things are cost more, so expenses are higher than usual. Imagine fuel, if fuel doesn't come down, imagine that for next year. I said, there's a lot of, so that is why I wanted to have the workshop, because I want to be transparent. Because the fact is that's where we're going, because that's the only choice we have. And that's why I just wanted to ask you these questions, and I wanted to see, and you explained why we were like
Mr.
that.
It's good that you brought it up, too.
Oh,
Andres, just real
oh.
quick question.
Yes, sir.
Moving forward, like we're discussing, how many pennies can we go up when we do go up? Is it 4?
Yeah, about 4, and the INS about 4.
Yes.
And there might be a chance to go up in M&O that doesn't need a voter approval. When you go up a certain number on the M&O,
Yeah,
you need to have
right.
voters approve it.
Voters have to vote for that.
Depending on the calculations, maybe a penny more or something without having board approval or 2.
But INS, we don't have to, right?
No.
No,
That's
INS,
just- that's
because
just
the
a
voters
district decision.
approved the bonds already.
Correct.
And that's what Mo Casey and Associates will come in to help us with
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And even going up those 4 pennies, if we do go up 4 pennies, we're still gonna be one of the lower,
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, yeah, we'll still be one of the lowest.
Yeah.
and I think, what we need to realize is, over the years of having the lowest tax rate, our facilities have taken a hit, it's time to maybe, look at that, because, we wanna have better, facilities and equipment for our students.
Yes.
And that's what it boils down to, for the students.
Mr. Sanchez,
Monday.
a little off topic, but it has to do with money. The SHARS money that comes in,
Right.
is that any kind of help are we getting anything back from that that money with SHARS?
Yeah, we always do.
We always do,
And-
okay, I know
and-
that it was supposed to increase or something this year. We're working on
We'll see.
trying to do something
And
to make it
that's
increase.
for later on. 'Cause
Okay, but that's something that.
Right now, we're working on the prior year, which the new company is working on a couple of months.
Uh-huh.
But the new year is all of there, the whole month. But they're working on the report for last year.
I was gonna say, when can we find out, at the end of the year, obviously, at the end of the academic year, or how does it work?
Wait next year, because we start getting advances, and then 1 or 2, and then we submit the report, and then check it and make adjustments, question
Okay.
information, provide more information, disallow something, and then we have the final number.
Okay.
And then we'll see. We're supposed to have more, a higher claim.
Yes, are those
Right.
usually like a couple of, is it like a million or?
That's a million and a couple of million.
Something,
Right.
a couple of million? Okay.
No, the increase, I don't know how much the increase will be.
Yeah, but the
But
average? is
yes,
what-
yes.
Okay,
Right now, we're submitting the one for 2021. We're checking on them, we're waiting for them to give us the go-ahead so that we can submit it.
okay,
Because my staff prepared it and send it to them to check, because they're looking at it.
okay,
When we get that, we'll submit it.
okay,
It's already due April 1.
thank you.
Sir, I had a question. How
Yes,
long
sir.
has Hilltop been with this district? What year did they start with, Hilltop?
Hilltop, oh, long time ago, and at least the 90s.
The 90s?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I
The-
asked. Because this goes 10 years back that we're at 0. That's why I want to know how long Hilltop has been around.
Yeah, no, yeah, they have. And like I said, on that one, Hilltop and also Mo Casey and Associates. I know Mr. Moak, Lynn Moak came to present to the board back then, and that's when the decision was what the board made to do the charter ratification election. Because we adopted the budget with a higher rate, and then we did the election in November. And when we presented to the board, we presented if the election passes and if the election doesn't pass. So luckily, the election passed, so we kept the budget the way it was. But if it hadn't passed, we would have had to make an amendment to decrease it at that time. But Mo Casey evaluated the numbers and they presented to the board. Yes.
One quick question on that bond. I remember it's something about it didn't pass, right? But if it would have passed, the government would have matched
Right.
half,
So 70,
50%?
On,
70, no?
I don't remember.
70, 30 or something like that? What was it? The
oh,
bond?
no, the IFA,
Yeah.
Oh, it would have been.
those were the good
Oh,
side.
yeah,
It was 70, 30,
it
no?
was
70?
70-30 or 80-20.
20, something like
Okay.
that.
80-20.
80-20.
It was 80-20.
So if it would
Okay,
have
just-
passed,
what are you
we would
talking
have
about?
less debt.
The bond, the
Okay.
2017 bond
Well,
that failed.
the-
Yeah. There was a
the-
match from the
The
state,
2016 bond was a 65-35 bond.
65, 35.
65.
We
so-
used to be at 80, like Mr. Aguilar said.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
And then it started to go down. The IFA, the amount that we qualify for IFA depends on ADA and property values. If the property values go up, the amount of IFA we get is less.
Correct.
If the ADA goes down, We had both up and down, so we are, right now, are 48, 46%, that's all we qualify for. Almost 6 years ago, we qualified for 65%. Right now, we're 48, 47. Checking the numbers, I was able to get it, because I had Hilltop Security check our INS rate to see what it would have been the rate we needed, because we were trying to see if we had moved the money, what we would have lost or what. And we checked it, and yes. So we're at 47%, that's what we qualify. If our ADA were to go up again, and the property value does not go up so high,
Right.
our percentage will go up. The reason we'll be at 80%, we used to say that the valley was property wealth poor district.
Right, right.
The valley of districts. But with the value going up in some cities, we're no longer that poor anymore.
And the reality is here in Weslaco, we have a lot of subdivisions that are gonna be expensive. I mean, the homes that are gonna be built, they're gonna be well over 250 to 300, over 350.
And the ADA law also
Yeah.
doesn't help us with that amount.
And then appraisal district values going up as well too. That raised the property values overall. So,
And that's why educating the public on bonds and what they're for is super important, right? That we have to really tell them,
transparency and a plan. I mean, if that's what the district wants to do, you need to have transparency, a clear plan, show them the advantage, like in this case, you know, what the match cost would be. And have a plan, you know, like I said, I've seen other elections where they come out and say, well, we want to do 100 million, and they're just broad bullets. People don't want to see that.
Maybe not.
You know, they want to see actual detail.
That's why we had
projects,
the
costs,
facilities
whatever.
evaluation a couple years ago, to have an idea of what we needed,
They would pay.
and have some input from the community, so we can say, we want to do this, and this project. This is an estimate of the cost, and we had consensus to come up with the project that got approved. We still need to bring it to the board for approval, it hasn't been approved by the board yet, so that's something that we need to look at still.
Yeah.
Any additional questions? Thank you for the comment, they're very good. We'll get sharper as we go along. We have very good questions from everybody, thank you. And if you have any other questions, let me know. You can send me an email or call me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Andres, thank you very much. And we now go to item 8, discussion on board book premiere. Dr. Valdez.
Mr. President and trustees, members of the audience, the recommendation, we want to bring this forward to the board for consideration at a future, or just give us direction. I want to thank Mrs. Ustaita because her and I have been working on getting this launched in our district. Although the district technology department, who do amazing work, created their version of board book.
Right.
So I know the new trustees that came on board in 2021, 2020, y'all were receiving the packets, like paper packets, right?
Yeah,
Paper
we
copies.
still do.
But before it was digital. The district has its system in place to facilitate not having to make packets. But there is board book premiere available, and Mrs. Daita and I have been looking at it, and we did have Rosemary, your secretary, look into it, and she attended a webinar, and so did Mr. Martinez, and we're all in favor of moving in that direction. And so we have the proposal here for you that you can review at your leisure. So it is a software, digital system that reduces the labor and materials involved in prepping for board meetings. And it has really some nice, 21st century features. And it was created by TASB in 2002, and so there are many organizations that use it. You can review it there. We do have a short video clip.
It's a short video,
that
about a
TASB
minute and 37
that Board Book has
seconds.
there, if you'd like to join on to
Carlos.
see.
Yes.
Before you start.
Yes.
Marcos and I, we can't see it on the iPads.
No,
Oh, you can't.
They're off.
They're off.
so I think it behooves the board to
Thank you. I didn't
move in
know
this
that.
direction. And it's minimal. You see the cost there, it's 2,500 per year.
you know, I think the cost offset with all the paperwork, all the papers that we spend.
Absolutely.
It's,
Absolutely.
a lot
And the
less.
time and all, so
Yeah.
yes. So.
and I always tell them how sometimes, on the weekends, I'm home, or at night, 7, 8 at night, their security's calling me, are you home? I have a confidential packet. Let me get out of the restroom, and running out there, and it's just so much more convenient to,
And I agree with Ms. Ustaita when she brought it up, and I had kind of already looked at it. She said, why aren't we doing that? Because when the packets come, sometimes, like I said, I'm not there Friday, so, and I don't get it on Friday, but I get it on Saturday, so then there goes Saturday and Sunday, because I'm going through the packets and,
Yeah.
and with this being digital, we can get it right away, and
Access.
we
I,
can
you
start
can still
looking through it.
get papers. Not only is it digital, but some of us prefer, I want to have the paper in front of me. Some of us prefer the paper, and
It's
that's
up to
okay.
you.
You can still get the paper. And it takes attendance, and you can go, the way it's set up online, I guess it'll show us, the way it's set up online, I've looked through other districts who have it. People can go in there, like, for example,
Yes.
when we are having our board meetings, it's hard for people who don't have the information in front of them
It's
to
on
follow
there.
along.
In
I
board
don't-
book, it's there.
Yes, and in board book, if you're at home and you're like, what are they talking about? You click on it and it has all, like, the rationale, superintendent rationale, everything is on there for people to read. It's
Very
not only for
transparent.
us, but it's for everybody else.
Now, I think there's two costs. I'm not sure, I don't
Yes,
have,
The fee is 1,000 and
what-
then 2,500.
yeah, we need, it's gonna be a little bit higher than.
Yeah, I saw that.
3,500 for the initial.
But compared to
Yes,
all the
the-
binders and
Yes.
paperwork.
And the way it's gonna work is you will be able to log in with any tablet, Mac, Windows machine, from anywhere.
And they do provide the
And-
unlimited training and support, so you would
Yeah.
receive your training. And Rosemary really was key, and we
Rosemary's
wanted
the
her
key.
input because she's the one that will be building these documents.
Correct.
And so she's all for it.
I understood also that it can be like for the cabinet or whoever, it's kind of like a collaboration that it doesn't have, I mean, I guess Rosemary would have the final look, but everybody kind of puts in what is that the way it works? Like, for example, HR, if they were gonna add something, would they be able to work on it and submit it and then,
They can work
I
on
believe so.
parts.
that's
on
how,
parts.
that's what I was reading.
Because there's different levels of security.
Oh, okay.
So, but partially, yes, yes.
Okay, because I know Rosemary does like, she types
Rosemary
everything
will,
up, right?
will have the entire thing, and then you'll have full access.
We
where you
typed
can even
everything.
You can even make your own
Okay.
notes, because again, it's not, the software's not here, it's all in the cloud.
Right.
So you individually can make your own notes and say, I just want to search for the notes that I did, and then you'll see what agendas you had. And, I mean, I will be your second trainer.
Okay.
They'll train you first, and then
And
I'll be your backup.
Sometimes I think, what meeting was it that we talked about this? And I don't know what I did with my papers, I already lost them. But when it stays online, you can always go back to the meetings and all the information is on
all
there,
there.
right?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I like also.
Correct.
Yeah, earlier today, I lost track of what was going on, because I was going back and looking at levies and stuff, and then Dr. Valdez's Mr. President, was doing this, and I said, oh. So, stand corrected, but
would help
what
with all
Mr.
that.
Saita, has put a lot of work into this, and Dr. Valdez, and I'm the last one that wants to change anything, because I'm still chisels and rocks and stuff, but the benefits are really gonna be
Yes, and they're.
there for all of us.
Yes. And again, I know you need internet access to connect, but there's a piece where you can download it. If you're going to go to an area where there's no internet, you can download it so you can at least view the parts of the agenda. And then when you connect back, then you can update everything, but I think for the value, it's a good price. It's improved quite a bit since it first came out.
2002.
So
Are we
we
gonna
would
see the
be
video?
Do you
looking
wanna
at
see?
Premiere
Do you
2.
want to see the video, or you're okay?
Yeah, so they can see.
It's just a minute and 37 seconds.
Yeah.
BoardBook is excited to announce an all-new version of our product called BoardBook Premier. BoardBook Premier is an easy-to-use web-based service that streamlines meeting preparation. The features that you enjoyed with the original BoardBook program are included in BoardBook Premier, as well as some new features based on what you, the customer, had to say. As you will see, the program has been enhanced to give you more of the features you've been asking for. For compilers, BoardBook Premier still offers you the flexibility to import items into new meetings and convert files to PDF. For board members, BoardBook Premier is even easier to navigate and access meeting materials. With the new Follow the Leader function, board members can follow along with the meeting presenter without having to manually flip pages or open documents. Note-taking is easier as well, as notes can be taken electronically within BoardBook Premier. These notes are also searchable. At BoardBook, our passion is to provide a great product and to deliver outstanding customer support. Please continue to check back here in the coming weeks for webinar and in-person training dates.
And that was the webinar that Rosemary Rodriguez and you.
Well,
that's
it's a
an
more,
older-
more in-depth webinar that we had. But it has a lot of features that you don't see here. But,
Right, yeah.
But,
So we can actually go back and say, and like 2 months ago, go into that meeting and say, oh, okay, this is how many votes it got, or who it passed with 4 to 3 votes or whatever? Is that how it works?
It does have the electronic voting feature.
Right.
Oh,
So we can vote from here.
nice. You don't have to spend like all of,
Right.
it depends how
Depends
much
how-
you want
how
to.
much
use
you
it,
want
right,
to.
implement
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
But it is
Transition.
good for record keeping.
slowly.
There's
it is.
attendance
Yeah, for
there.
transparency and,
Because I want to go full, like, let's go, let's do it, but I know they're like, no, hold on.
because we could do
Let's
both. We
learn
could
little
do
by little.
a visual one for people
Correct.
watching, and then we could
And
do
then click
verbal,
on-
and then we can also do one, electronically, so that way people can go back and look and see. And
Yeah.
it has a lot of great features. I mean, it was a great
Yeah,
idea.
yeah.
Once approved and everything, how long will it take us to get started with it?
I can check with the company, but I think the main piece is to get Rosemary
Trained.
kind of trained and,
Since it's only 2,000, though, do we have to approve it, or can he just get it?
No, we can just, we
You
don't
can
need
make it-
approval.
you don't need approval.
We just, if we
Just get it,
Okay, well, just for the record.
just
That-
to make sure.
that is a subscription, so it's
Once a year, right?
It's
Right.
every year.
Yeah.
For the rest of the time, yeah. So it's.
Well,
but
that's
it's-
probably what we spend on half the paperwork
On
that
paper.
gets.
Yeah, the ink and paper and time.
And time
Yeah,
for
and
the
time.
employees
Yeah,
to.
human capital.
Oh,
The
absolutely.
collaboration is good.
Yeah.
Compilers.
But they do put a lot of work into the binders and the packets.
Oh, yeah.
They do,
Oh, yeah.
and I mean, we have security.
It's cabinet level
know.
who prepares the documents.
Staff that
All
drops
the
it off
We're the
and-
ones who prepare the documents.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So,
And
we're
Ms.
very grateful for that.
Rosemary compiles.
Well, I like the fact of the privacy, especially, how we get the level 3 packets to review.
Oh, yeah.
You don't, there's not a paperwork, it's just for us.
Right.
So,
Right.
Would that be used for grievances
security.
also, like the packets, the grievance packets?
Well, that's something to, I'm not sure. We'd have to research that one.
I think they have a feature where you have to log in, like, it won't be, the public won't be able to do it, but we'll have to, like, there's,
Access.
yeah, confidential files, we'll have to
Yeah.
use our username and password.
Oh, okay.
And that's where
So you
the
could use it for
different levels of
grievances.
security. You'll have a
Right.
higher level.
Right.
Everybody else will have lower where they can't view everything you're viewing.
Right, and the public will have like a general one.
Correct.
that would,
That's good.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay?
That concludes our presentations
Item 9, Coach Cuellar.
on the workshop topics.
Item 9.
Thank you, Dr. Valdez. Coach and I were discussing,
Yes. You like to
But,
be interactive, the
but
paper
that's-
writers.
but
You want to
it's
be.
all good. We now go to item 9, adjournment,
So
Oh,
moved.
move.
and the time is 8:47. 8:47, we are adjourned.